Welcome to the next video in the Cheat Engine series, and in this one we're going to talk more about a stylistic approach, if you will, to how to find values and how to filter them and things like that. Um, so this is not immediately, this is not a hard and fast thing. Different people have different approaches, and generally you'll find something that works for you, and and you'll stick with that. But from the approach, what would I say? From a sort of generic programming approach. Um, it's sort of all about patterns and setting up an environment in general. And it's really vague and whatnot. So I'll get into it or I'll expand a little bit. I'll expand on it a little bit. And so let's. What do I mean by a pattern? Well, we'll open up the game here, and we'll go to new game, launch the campaign. And just like we've been doing in the previous videos, let's find the value for karma. We'll start with the random character. Continue, yada yada yada. All right, available karma is 34. So if we want to find the value of 34, we know how to do that. We go to the desktop, we open up Cheat Engine, attach to the process wherever it is. It's right there. 34. Spend some points. 25. Brings it way down. Spend some more points. 7. All right, so we have these two values. We can mess around with them and figure out which one does what. You know, what's the new value associated, or what's the value for current available karma up here, and you know what's the other one would be the value that's assigned to the actual player karma once we start the game. But the point of this video is not really to deal with any of that. It's more about setting up an environment where we can find whatever the value is, and this is not something that's specific to to finding the karma in this game. And so the reason why we're rolling our own character, as I sort of alluded to in one of the previous videos, is so that we have a larger number up here to work with. So again, search for 34, then you spend some points, you search for 7, you find the value, it's great. Um, you click on one of these archetypes over here, you're limited to 5 karma. So if we go back to Cheat Engine here and we want to find the value, we're searching for 5, which is a much more common value. Generally, the lower the number, the more common. Like there's just less randomness associated with it. So you can see up here, just searching for 5 in this whole process, brings back 25, basically 25,000 results. So let's go back, um, roll our own character. So now we're looking for 34. Go back to Cheat Engine, do a new scan, search for 34. It's a higher number. It's more arbitrary, and you can see that just by intrinsically, the value is less random, like we've been saying. So it finds 5,566 results. That's a much. It's still, we have to filter it down, but that's a much more manageable. By a factor of 5, it's easier to deal with. So this speaks to, in a concrete way, it speaks to the point that I'm trying to make in this video, which is you always want to give yourself as much room as possible to mess with the values that you're trying to find. And I'll highlight a specific case, which is 0 and 1. If you can ever absolutely avoid it, don't ever search for 0 and 1 or filter, based on 0 1. I mean, I've done it, and I'm sure a lot of people have, and there are times where it can't be avoided. Specifically, if you're looking for a trigger that happens to be a Boolean value, true or false, or something like that, there are times where you have to search for 0 and 1. But let's illustrate what I mean. So we'll go to new scan. We could just search for 0, or we could search for 1. But in an effort to make it somewhat valid, we'll go over here and let's see if we can get the actual available karma number down to 1. There we go. So again, just to sort of a recap here, we can remember that available karma, we searched for 34 when we started up the screen, with a random character, 5,000 results. We started up an archetype, available karma 5, we got 25,000 results. So now, whatever we're doing, archetype or not, our available karma is 1. So let's just pretend for a moment, for argument's sake, that we could only oscillate this value between 1 and 0. So we go into Cheat Engine. We say I want to search for 1. Now I'm gonna click first scan and we're gonna do it. But again, the purpose of this example is to illustrate why you never want to search for 1s and 0s. So you search for 1, you get 285,000 values. It's okay, it's great. We want to make it 0. You make it 0, filter it down. You still got 7,000. And you can, if we just sit here for a second, you can see these values are just, they're changing randomly as the game runs certain routines. I mean, 1 and 0 are values that are not necessarily what you think they might be. That is to say, when you search for an integer value of 0 or 1, you're going to get all sorts of results, that are probably referencing internal values of the game that change based on different routines that it runs, and not strictly in an event sense, but more just as it does basic things like check with the OS for various services and things like that, just internal things that have no use to us. um, Searching for 1 and 0 is inherently dangerous for that reason, and especially if you are searching 1 and 0 and you get down to a manageable list. So let's bring this back up to 1. We'll filter that. So I mean, we're down to 1,224 results. So again, still a lot, but manageable, I guess. Even scrolling through this list, you can see that there are just some values in here that are ridiculous. Let's go back up here a little bit, and they will still arbitrarily change based on the state, if you will, of the actual program. These top ones probably being a good example. You can see this one just changed. If we wait probably 5 seconds, there you go, they all change. So again, 1 and 0, inherently dangerous things to search for. It can be done, and you can do it. If we sat here and if we kept changing the value back to 0, we will eventually find it. So now we're down to 787. Let's change it back to 1, down to 488. 0. And I don't recommend this at all, but I mean, we're going through it just for illustration purposes. Change it back to 1. I mean, you can see we filtered it back and forth a couple times. The stuff's really changing a lot. You still have 483 addresses. I mean, if you start poking around in these addresses, you're going to crash the game. I'm absolutely sure of it. So again, 1 and 0 are values you do not want to mess with unless you absolutely have to. You'd probably have to bounce back between 1 and 0 about 20 times or so to get this down to a manageable list, and find the value you're actually looking for. So just to sort of bring this home a little bit, we'll go back. We'll get an archetype. We have 8 karma. We're going to do a new scan. Go 8. Blah 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 blah. It's great. Spend a point. Go to 4. Now, so 2 searches is good. We got the values we want. One further thing that I would say is if you set yourself up, we'll go back here. If you set yourself up in an environment where you have a large range that you can work with, that is to say that if you start one of these archetypes here, you have 8. So whenever you're filtering for values, and if it's at all available to you, set it up so that you can have a large change in the value you're filtering for. So let's search for 8. We get 36,000 results. Now, if we just change it by 1 and we search for 7, it gets down to 35, and then we could, scroll down, change it by 1, go to 6, and then we're down to 2. So it took us 3 times. Now, let's go back, do this, do that, reset it. All right, new scan, 8. We get 36,582 results. What if we change it by a larger difference? So instead of just going from 8 to 7, we're going to go from 8 to 0. See what we get. 278. Going to 0 was probably not the best bet there for reasons that we talked about earlier. So let's do another sequential or large jump. Go to 4. All right. So 3 filters as well. Let's see if we can maybe bring this home a little bit, make a better example. We got 37. I don't want to do that. Let's go back. Use the same archetype. Gonna search for 8. 36,200 results, comparable to what we had in the beginning. Let's just bring it down. Let's go to 3. So now we went from 8 to 3. Now we're going to search for 3. Get 35 results. Again, it's comparable to what we did before when we brought it to 0. So make it 1, 2. So in 3 filtration steps is much better, or very easy to manage, as opposed to if we only had 2 values to work with here. You could change it from 1 to 3 to 1 to 3 to 1 to 3. Let's do that. Let's go to a new scan. Search for 3. Change it to 1. See what we get. 22 results. It seems hell-bent on proving me wrong, but so there's the 3rd filtration step. It took us 3 steps before, so manageable set, but we still have 15 results instead of 2, which is what we had. So let's bring it down to 1. Go to 1. You can see we're filtering it down again. So I mean, again, 4 steps now. We still haven't gotten down to the 2 that we want. Change it back to 3. You can see they're all going back to 3 now. Change it back to 1. Go to 1. I mean, the point that's been made here is the more control you have over the value that you're searching for, the easier it's going to be to find that value, because you can do completely random jumps in that value. So let's say we wanted to, every time we going back to 3, everything is changing. So we'll never be able to filter this down. We're just going to wind up poking at random memory addresses. So instead, let's get rid of that and get rid of that. We're going to jump up to 7, and now you can see that all these values right here are different. They're totally nonsensical values. So we can already see the 2 that we want, but we'll just filter it anyway. And now we have these 2. So we know that these, in general, we know that these 2 are the ones that we want, and we can put in values and see which one is what and what we want. But hopefully the point here is, whenever you're trying to find a value, always set yourself up with an environment that gives you as much control as possible over that value. Otherwise, you're going to be doing more work than you have to. And that's pretty much that. And for complete example purposes, let's search for just 1. I don't want to search for 0 yet. We'll do that last. So we're going to search this whole process for the value of 1. And let's just see what we get. 280,000. It's a lot. So now we're going to search. We're going to do new scan. We're going to search for 0. And it's going to take a little bit. You're going to get 47 million results. Again, 0 is what you absolutely don't want to scan for as an initial value, just because you're going to get such a large result set that you can still filter it down. For example, if we spend all of our karma, so that say we want to search for 0, it's great. We get 46 million. Now if we go back and we have control over it and we search for 2, we'll get it down to a manageable set, 871. You could do further things like that, but if you're searching for a value and you can only change it between 0 and 1, you're going to want to try to set up an environment where you don't have to deal with that constraint. And if you absolutely can't set that environment up and you have to deal with just values that oscillate between 1 and 0, then you just know that it's inherently tricky because of what 0 means in the context of memory. It may not be the integer 0. It may it may be a Boolean, or in technical it may be a null value or something like that. It all depends on the context and how 0 is being interpreted. So the lesson of this video, the thesis, or not the thesis, but the summary of this video would be: give yourself as much control as possible when searching for a value, so that you can change that value and make it whatever you want in absolute arbitrary jumps. Don't go from 10 to 9 to 8 to 7. Go from 10 to 3 to 9, to 5, or something. Just jumps like that will make it a lot easier when you're trying to find a value, and will save you a lot of time and probably some headaches as well.